Thank you, Stefica. Good afternoon, welcome back. For those who just joined us online, my name is Joaquim Felix. I'm a digitalization policy expert in the governance unit here at Ela. I will be moderating this session. Let's move on to the second set of 3 presentations of selected papers received during Ela's last call for papers. We'll proceed as previously. There will be 3 presentations followed by Q&A. Room participants have priority, but online questions via Slido are welcome. If by any chance time runs out and we don't have the opportunity to answer all the questions, we will do a follow-up with the speakers after the event. This session showcases how AI and automation can help identify and validate skills, support evidence-based policy, and streamline secure worker mobility across sectors and borders. Let's dive in and discover how these digital innovations are shaping the future of the labor market. With us, Christoph from Skill Lab to present Skills Passport for Labor Mobility. This solution explores how AI can bridge the gap between people's real skills and labor market needs. Dear Christoph, the floor is yours.
Okay, here we go. You can hear me? Perfect. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I was supposed to be joined by my colleague Rinze, who couldn't make it due to personal circumstance, so you need to bear with my German accent for some time. I'm very sorry about that. Before I go into the detail of the presentation, maybe a quick story on who we are and why we do what we do. So, Skill Lab, or the idea of Skill Lab, really started kicking off during what is today known as a European refugee crisis. I don't like that word, but I think you know the situation we describe here. And we've seen that refugees and migrants struggle to connect to jobs in the European Union. So there were many problems and many barriers these people faced, but one really stood out to us. And that is an anecdotal evidence from my colleague and co-founder, Asa, who arrived to Europe as a refugee herself. And her problem was a very, let's say, representative problem that many people had and still have in the labor market. So she comes to Europe with a CV, and she worked as an IT specialist for the World Food Program. She goes to European Employment Service. They take her CV and they apply so-called passing technology. They take a CV, the machine reads it, and then they make a recommendation based on what they read on the CV. And they recommend to my colleague to work on a farm, because there was a word food on the CV. It has nothing to do with, obviously, her actual background, and it shows you the problem in matching, right? In matching through people, but also in matching through machines. Underneath this, and that's really what we looked into, is a fundamental problem, and that is a strong reliance on degrees and titles. So we're trying to match people on the basis of titles which either might not be there or are inaccurate. So what is a key account manager doing, right? So if you don't know the brand, the employer, you legitimately could ask, what actually did that person do? So to answer that question, we found out that obviously we need to look into skills, right? So if a job title or a degree is not accurate enough, could we achieve better results when we try to identify a person's skills? So how do we get the person to describe what they were doing, let's say through 100 skills rather than 3 arbitrary titles on a CV or diplomas, or even the lack thereof? And that's exactly what we started working on. If you think about that problem, if you think about how do you connect job seekers, education providers, and employers more effectively, you immediately come to see that you cannot do this without the engagement of public employment services, because they are the ones with that mission, they are the ones with that platform, and they are the ones working closely with the people that need that help in better matching. And that's exactly what we do at Skill Lab. We work with public employment services dominantly in most countries, not all of them. If you do that, such a niche thing, working with public employment services, by definition you work globally, because there's not so many public employment services. But there's also obviously international organizations and large third sector organizations that sometimes take a function that a public employment service would normally have. So, as mentioned, what we do really centers on skills. For us, skills are really a common language, right? It's a thing that connects. We spoke about standards in most presentations this morning. Skills, and skills taxonomies in particular, are really that common language to bridge between, let's say, the education side, the employer side, and the job seeker side. Now, that standard is normally defined in taxonomies, but these taxonomies need to be there. We have the ESCO standard in the European Union, which is fantastic. We'll get back to that later. National countries either adopt ESCO in the European Union or have their own standards, but there is still a way to go, right? These national taxonomies are way from perfect. They need to be maintained, especially for the usage of AI. We'll see this later. They need to be adopted outside of the European Union. We see this and do this a lot. And most importantly, do they need to be maintained, right? If you have a standard once, it could be outdated in a year from now. It needs to be maintained, it needs to be fed, it needs to be checked, and it needs to be updated. When you have that standard, right, and you work, let's say, on the data science piece of that standard, you can do quite a bit. You can go into the direction of policy analysis, forecasting. You can go into core technology applications that we develop, obviously the matching part, but also the career guidance part, where skills information is a fundamental ingredient of that. And you can go into, obviously, the maintenance of curriculum design and occupational standards. On the user side, and that's where we're going to dig deeper a little bit in this presentation, is really the notion of skills assessment, skills recognition, and skills passports. Now, we use AI, and I think I'm echoing what everybody else said so far, as an enabler and an enhancement, and that's very important. You'll see this moving forward. We do not seek to replace or substitute any given services. We want to enhance them and make them better. And it fundamentally centers off the work that normally employment services do. Now, what you see here is a visualization of the ESCO framework. For those of you who don't know, that's a European Skills and Competency framework. It has 14,000 skills and competence items in there. That's not even so much, right? There's way bigger taxonomies with more concepts even. But there's a fundamental, let's say, shortcoming to these taxonomies. A taxonomy is a very boxed approach. You would say a waiter has these 20 skills. Point, right? Key account manager, these 18 skills. But the reality is very different. If I'm a waiter in, let's say, Vienna, Bratislava, or any other major city, very likely, in my experience as a waiter, I touched upon skills from the domain of tourism. So another waiter, let's say, in the countryside, helped out in the kitchen and knows about skills from the domain of cooking. And yet, in employment support, in matching technology, we place them in the same box. We assume a waiter is a waiter. A warehouse employee at Amazon is an entirely different skill set than a warehouse employee in a small shop around the corner. And what we use AI for really is to say, make it easy to generate user-validated skills information. And we had this earlier, I think there was a question about skills data and data sets that we use. We shouldn't rely on assumptions. We shouldn't rely on 2 or 3 year-old surveys. If we really want reliable data, you need to include the people and work with them, right? And that means engaging with people. So if you have that holistic overview, right? If you really work with people through technology, we'll get to this later, and you understand what somebody was doing when they were raising a family, taking a caring responsibility at home, taking a certain job and a certain education, and you use AI for that, the matching does not need to be a black box matching. That's very important, right? So we do not seek to just match people through AI, nobody knows why, and something comes out and we cannot explain it. We deliberately want to use AI to get quality information in, get structured data with and through and controlled by the users themselves and not making assumptions on their behalf. Now, that leads us into a very interesting concept, and that's the one of a skills passport, which we define as follows. It's a repository of recognized diplomas, qualifications, skills achieved at various occasions in life, and that is very important, to be utilized under the control of the passport owner. And that is a very important concept, right? It has 2 things. It's about ownership, we see that later, and utilization. So it keeps that concept of utilization in mind. These skills passports allow us to do a couple of things. Dominantly, connecting otherwise unconnected ecosystems. If you ask employers what a skill is, they have a very clear idea. The education providers have a very clear idea. The people yet another idea. If you want to connect this, you need technology. And that's exactly what skills passports address. So if we analyze, and that's really, I don't know, 10 plus countries we looked at, if you look at the key use cases here of skills passports, it's really capturing someone's skills. It's about recording educational pathways of the users. It's about connecting employers to the workforce. And eventually, it's about evidence-based decision-making. Now, with all of these use cases, there's always 2 things, right? There's what you can do within a given product, within a given service, within a given, let's say, organization. And then there is what you can do if you connect to the ecosystem. And I can only echo the discussion about APIs and reliability and let's say the ecosystem approach. We'll see this later here, which obviously broadens the capabilities and opportunities you can achieve through skills passports. So every skills passport project in every country is different, right? There's not a one-size-fits-all thing. It really means getting it right. And that's a general observation when working with governments. There's not a common standard or blueprint, because every government serves different people, they have different procedures, they have different things they care about. If you look about the commonalities, it's really about, let's say, profile information, and that often includes things like desired career paths, goals. You need to understand what somebody's after. You need to understand their skills inventory, the skills metrics that underpins this. You need to understand experience, educational experience. You need to understand where certain gaps sit, and what you match against really needs to be something that is bespoke and needs to be determined as well. And eventually, you get to the recommendations and planning, but we see that later. The thing with technology is that technology in itself is useless if it's not being used. And I think that's something which all of you know and might have experienced. So if you build the best match engine in the world or the best tool from a technology perspective and nobody picks it up, then that effort was lost, right? So as important as the technology itself is the way you deliver it and you build it and you design it. So when we speak about technology, we equally need to speak about UX, UI, and we need to speak about the inclusion of users from the get-go into the service. So if you really want people to give you valuable data, if you want real-time labor market data, and if you want people to use skills passports, they need to, A, find it easy to use these tools, and B, and that's the most important thing, they need to understand why. What's my utility? What do I get out of the interaction with a certain tool? If you can't solve that and answer that for the people, the adoption will remain low. And so as much as we solve technology problems, we also solve usability problems. Now, for the technical side of things, if we look at, let's say, how we structure skills passports projects, we like to think about this in phases, right? This is a simplification of a process, but if you think about a skills passports, let's say in 4 phases, phase 1 always is a definition phase. So how do you define a skill, right? How do you do this? How do you solve that in a given country? You go back to the taxonomy discussion, and that is a unified, ideally, definition. Phase 2 is really how do you collect the skills? Phase 3 is how do you validate the skills? And phase 4 is how do you utilize the skills? Now, in the top layer here, the green boxes is things that you can solve with technology, right? Things that you can build in tools, in existing or newly built applications. That is really ask people to profile their skills, claim that data for themselves, ask them to connect with past or future employers, ask them to connect to the counselors that supervise them. So you can build all of these things in software products. And eventually, for the utilization bit, it's really about recommender systems, right? Recommend training, recommend education, and so on and so forth. The lower box is API integrations, and I'm not going to repeat what the panel previously discussed. The more reliable these API integrations are, and the more universal, the more powerful anything you build, including skills passports, will be, right? Is there a repository of credentials, training, and so on and so forth? Can we connect to these things theoretically and also practically, right? So sometimes these API connections are there, but broken or shaky. It needs to work and it needs to be productive. So if you look at, let's say, a schematic visualization of how skills passports projects work, here's an example, let's say, for the employer market. You see we have two ideas to look at employers, and they can be very complementary. So we want skills passports to be able to show to any given employer anywhere what the person was doing, including the skills information from, let's say, life experiences, what they care about, what they did when they didn't work, when they worked informally, which diplomas they obtained. So it's all kinds of, let's say, modules which you can comprise in skills passports. Obviously, that needs to be tied to national IDs and so on and so forth, if possible. And then you send this information, you design these systems in a way that they really help people to apply for jobs, search jobs, apply for jobs, make this util, right? Increase the utilization of these products. At the same time, you also need the employers to send verified information back. So let's say if I worked somewhere and I want the employer to testify that I worked 3-4 years at this company and I did this and that, you need the employer. Or, and that's an alternative here, you can also utilize tax records, for example. In some countries we have that. There's given repositories and records of people people's past experience when they've been insured or paid taxes, and you draw the information from there. The same, by the way, goes for education and training. Again, you can use skills passports to help people make informed decisions on where to go, what to do, which course to take. And that's not a trivial choice, by the way. Huh? If you look at why courses are named in certain ways, it's because they sound interesting, but is it something that I really need, and what does it help me with in the light of the labor market where I'm located? That's quite a tricky question that benefits from skills information, of course. At the same time, you need training providers to send data back. You need them to validate credentials, badges, and that again is a question of an ecosystem, and eventually is a question of ecosystem maturity. So you can have a great skills passport concept, but if you don't have training providers participating in this and filling this information out, it will pause. So you can do it with and without these feedback loops. As mentioned, we think about different categories of skills information. It can be self-reported, it can be evidence-supported through counselors, for example, or employers, and it can be verified. And then think of this as a couple of, let's say, pillars, and this is just an exemplary visualization of where this data comes from. Why do we need this kind of thing? It's simple. We have match engines that don't have data to work with, right? So what do we do when we don't have people's data and validated data, and we match them on assumptions? We need to promote self-service tools. So we have employment services, I think, across Europe that report the same thing. More work with less stuff. So give autonomy to the people, let them solve part of the problem. Policy planning analysis, I think, is self-explanatory. We cannot afford to just shoot into the wild anymore. And eventually, it's really about connecting and opening up government. So instead of building parallel structures between government entities to the education and labor landscape, try to run in parallel and build these things together. That's the end of my presentation. You see my email address up here. Obviously, ping me later for questions if we don't have time in the Q&A. And thank you for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this great presentation, inspiring presentation. Let's proceed with the next presentation with Isabella and Adam from Kosmicki University and Polish-Japanese Academy of Information Technology, respectively. They will be presenting the design of the Link for Skills Navigator, AI-assisted labor market, skills in migration, knowledge-based engineering and sciences. This is an AI-assisted expert system designed to address global skills shortages.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. I see that this is not the first slide. Can I have? Yes, exactly. Thank you very much, Joaquin, for bringing us and for your effort and all your team to bring us over here. It's like feel at Ela like at home. I'm working with Ela in European labor services, so Christos, it's not that rare that working with labor, European or local labor services, I'm in this space as well. Today we are going to present to you a system which was developed thanks to Horizon Europe funding program. We are scholars. I'm representing labor market part and Adam is a tech scholar. So we are working with practitioners in this project. So I'm here to make you, to sense make or policy make of this technological development, and Adam is to explain the backhand more of the system we created. So we did our homework very well, Joaquin, because we answered all your questions through our presentations. So the challenge which we posed in front of us, let me zoom out a little bit, that imagine that you're a policymaker or employer, a recruitment agency, and you need to make decisions about the future of the workforce. Yes, so what we need to consider here, that is, of course, aging and shrinking populations of the European Union, the need for reskilling, upskilling, at which moment of career is very important as well. There is another solution like automation, which is in the strategy of employers, and there is migration. And for the future, let's imagine 2060, that's our range of projections. that we need to make this decision. Do we want to automate? Do we want to reskill, upskill? Do we want to bring more migrants or utilize existing ones? Or we want to do other combination of these scenarios. Imagine yourself, because the future is not that far away, with the current speed of automation and aging, this is something to consider. And we, with the mountains of information, knowledge, expertise, report, scientific articles coming up, we wanted to create an expert-based system which you as policymakers, as employers, as recruitment companies, to think ahead. Yes, so it's not something which is, of course, we need to start from now, from the scratch, because we need to have a baseline scenario. So challenges, the global labor markets are increasingly facing critical skill shortages, misaligned skill flows, and policy blind spots when matching labor demand with talent supply, particularly across borders. And across borders, we do not only mean within the EU, but also from the outside of the EU. So it's a wider thinking project. Current barriers, fragmented data on EU demography, skill shortages, migration and skill and talent partnerships, which is one of the policy options. Lack of actionable insights on skill and talent partnerships. Inaccessible tools for non-experts to explore skill and migration trend in a macro perspective. Lack of support for choosing various policy options, how to address skill shortages like upskilling, retraining mid-career, later retirement, automation, high immigration, and selective migration. So remember about these 5 scenarios. So the Link for Skill AI-assisted tool, which we created, it's knowledge-based expert system with AI assistant. So it's not fully AI system, it's just a system which combines very wide range of knowledge checked by human experts. So it's the system that supports data-driven decision-making for managing and optimizing global skill flows. The core objectives are to support labor market stakeholders, policymakers, employers, educators with actionable insights, enable fair and efficient skill mobility between origin and destination countries, provide open access interactive data dashboards to empower users with scenario-based planning. Key advantages: centralized interface, combining labor market data, policy partnerships, and migration insights, co-created with stakeholders, which is a keyword here because we are midway, policymakers, recruiters, and employers, enables policy simulations, which is also very important because you can make yourself, use your simulation to think what to do for the future. And we know that neither one size fits all nor one scenario would be enough to deal with the skill shortages which have started, but they will be piling up. This is the first interface of the navigator. I'm going to hand over to Adam the explanation what it is, what will you find in it. So interactive dashboards, AI-driven assistance, data exploration and visualization, and migration corridor analysis as case studies. For whom? Mostly for policymakers. So colleagues from EU are very welcome, and we are collaborating particularly with DG Home, but also with Ela and policy support. So what is very important, that it combines EU labor market analysis, but not only one dimension, because it has lots of demography in it. So you have macroeconomic analysis with demographic analysis, which is, you know this from scientific papers, but you cannot make your own thinking with that. Future workforce and scenarios modeling, with scenarios I mentioned. What if we automate? And we know that currently employers do not want to automate that much. They still want to bring migrants because it's cheaper. Yes, so the question is how many years it will take that they will automate. Do we want to retrain, upskill the current labor force, or we want to do something else? So this future workforce scenario building is very important. Skill and talent partnership inventory for countries who use this tool to bring skills and talents from non-EU countries, and migration skill corridor as a concept which works beyond the talent partnership to show how difficult it is to combine education and training structures between origin and destination country. And then I hand over to Adam to explain what's at the back end of this system.
Isa. As Isa introduced me already, I'm not a migration expert, I'm an IT researcher. And what I got from Isa is this bunch of data and structured, non-structured, all other kinds, and the task to do something useful with it. We have used a co-design approach. We have done several workshops with stakeholders, with experts, and with policymakers, trying to understand what we could do. And some of the things that came out, like here, is trying to use these projections, which, by the way, are created by a team of demographic experts and microeconomists at IASA. They are making the forecast that Isa mentioned. And we are using this to show some projections of the future to enable evidence-based policy making. That was one of the requests from the policymakers, obviously, to anticipate future skill demands and do stuff like that. A big team in our project are researchers working not just in the EU, but also in the EU partner countries that are sending labor workers to countries in the European Union. And from them, we get data about the migration skill corridors, skills mobility and talent partnerships, and there are surveys done which is also providing us with this data. All of this data is combined into a database which has been designed to represent, ontologically represent, most concepts on the labor market and related also to mobility and migration. We hope this will actually work, but we can actually have an open system where we can in the future load new open data sets and provide further functionalities using that. This is also using the concept of the superset technology, which is a visualization, data visualization and exploration package, an open source one, obviously, from Apache, which enables people to create their own visualizations of data. Here are some examples of how this looks like. Basically, you can create your own chart based on the data in the database, and you can create your own dashboard in our system. It's customizable. We will, of course, also provide our own dashboards tailored to the data that's already provided by our partners to make this understandable. You can filter the data using different things such as country, occupation, education level, all kinds of other stuff. And also, we can use this data to either show things on the map, like in this case, trying to learn, for example, about the profiles of workers in the source countries and to show this on the chart, or to compare the policy scenarios. That is another possibility that we will enable to try to use these projections created by the microeconomists and demographers from IASA to give an answer which policy is better, or maybe even which policy mix will be better, depending on how far we get. This is a research project, remember, so we are experimenting with a lot of things, and hopefully everything will work at the end of the project. And one of the things we are also experimenting with is a chatbot, which is based on both unstructured and structured data. So the typical approach in our case would be to use research articles to answer questions. We have created a repository of research articles which can, again, it's open, and we can load more articles, we can supplement this. Based on that information, our chatbot can answer questions, but when it does, it is also giving a source to one of these articles, hopefully using a retrieval augmented generation approach which reduces the likelihood of hallucinations, obviously, right? The other thing which Mira can also do is it can use the structured data in the database, including the projections, to try to answer questions as well, and even to provide you with a link to a dashboard in the answers. That is completely new stuff, which is already somewhat working. We're still testing and working on it. You can use the dashboard also to browse the data on the skill mobility partnerships and the migration skill corridors to see some information, some reports created by the experts about this information. And a few final words. Basically, we are working always with stakeholders. The evaluation of the navigator will also be done with stakeholders. We'll start soon. Hopefully, we'll get some additional feedback and co-design this further, and back to you.
Wonderful. So it means that Mira, which is migration-informed recommendation assistant, will be a chatbot walking in the system. So it will take all the visualizations from the data sets from public statistics available to us, because there are many limitations, as I mentioned in my intervention at the very beginning, but also from checked articles and information checked by the whole consortium of experts on both sides of the globe, from origin countries and destination countries. So we want this chatbot to be really knowledgeable chatbot, free of hallucination and non-expert checked knowledge. Yes, so that's very important innovation on our side. So the keywords are here: knowledge-based expert system, which is not new thing in technology, it's rather old, but we revamped it to brought it to the policy makers, and chatbot based on the closed knowledge data. Challenges and lessons learned. Challenges, obviously, there's a data harmonization across countries and sources. As you can imagine, the biggest challenge is between non-EU countries and EU countries. But also within the EU, we know that Eurostat and other agencies working with statistics did already tremendous work, but still more work to be done. Balancing automation with ethical oversight in recommendation system, because we know already from our scenario analysis that automation is the only scenario able to bring vacancy rate down, but with huge underutilization of workers. So we need to do something. It means that we need policy mix to make this not happening. Yes, that there are other policies which will help us to bring vacancy rates down and to utilize workers. So maintaining also user friendliness while offering advanced filtering and analytics, which is not that easy because Apache system is friendly, but not for everyone. So you need to be qualified policymaker, decision maker to make this happen. Yeah, so that's something which we will be co-creating and testing. Lessons learned, stakeholders' involvement is crucial in tool design and usability testing. We are starting the new phase in November. Need to anticipate digital literacy gap in user groups. Emphasis on transparency in algorithmic decision support is vital for trust. And way forward, piloting with stakeholders, policymakers, recruiters, employers, presenting policy options, policy mix in dashboard for addressing global skill shortages. For now, we can only present 2 scenarios. What about if 3 are the options? So there are technological limitations. Talks with European Commission and its agency who can take it over after the end of the project. And we know that it needs to be very precise, very accurate, very reliable system for the Commission to make use of it. So we are fully aware of that. Making user-friendly updates of knowledge repository for stakeholders, and Adam mentioned this will be open system after login when you will be able to update the data set, and ongoing updates in response to policy feedback and real-world usage. Because, as Christopher said, bridging with the previous presentation, technology needs to be used, but above all, it needs to be co-created with target group to who is designed for, and in our case, it's mostly you, policymakers, employers, recruitment companies, employment services. So that's all from us and from all our consortium, 13 partners, one business partners, half of them come from origin countries, half of them in the destination countries. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this great presentation. We will now have our last, but also very promising presentation of this session. With us, Sagar and Fabian from Tibe.io, presenting us Ingo, a secure automated solution for compliance and labor mobility in construction. This is a solution built for the construction sector that addresses the complex landscape of compliance with digitized credentials. Dear speakers, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So, first of all, hello everyone, and thanks for having us today. First, let me introduce you to my colleague Florian Sager. My name is Fabian Pangratz, and today we represent the subcontractor management software Ingo. Ingo is the result of a good collaboration between the construction company Lindner and the two software companies Esatus and Type. So Ingo is developed and tested in direct interaction with the practical implementation to avoid undeclared work and to secure social security. But why, or first of all, let me show you some key facts about the Lindner Group to show you the practical relevance. So Lindner is involved in 3,000 construction sites every day. That means Lindner works together with 400 companies and more than 1,000 employees from other European countries every year. But why did these three companies, Ingo, Esatus, Type, and Lindner, come together to develop Ingo? The reason for is very simple. Because it's very hard, or the measures to combat undeclared work and to secure social security are very complex, and the damage is very high if mistakes happen. So, to illustrate, in Germany in the year 2024, nearly 100,000 investigations were initiated, a damage amounting more than 750 million euros was caused, and more than 1,200 years of prison sentences were imposed. But why is so much damage caused? The reason for is very simple. Let's assume that on one construction site, 40 companies and 200 employees are involved. That means that 1,600 plus 800 documents per construction site are necessary. So it's easy to lose track and mistakes happen. To avoid this, Ingo was developed. So the overall objective of Ingo is to contribute to more fair and effective labor mobility so workers can move freely, knowing that their rights and wages are secured. But how can we achieve this? I also mentioned that paperwork costs time and that the mistakes cost a lot of more. And Ingo helps that it is possible to simplify the verification process for all parties involved, to ensure secure and transparent data handling, that the paperwork is reduced, I already mentioned, that the language barriers are eliminated, and that the legal employment and the minimum wage compliance are ensured before the workers enter the construction site. So Ingo helps all three parties involved at the construction site. That means the general contractor, the subcontractor, and the employees themselves. So for the general contractor, this means Ingo helps them with the legal obligations by recording credentials, controlling access, and documenting minimum wage and employment status information, all digitally and in one place. So Ingo makes it possible that requirements are defined centrally, that all the credentials are digitally stored and verifiable, that the subcontractors know what is needed, and that the access is only possible with complete documents. For the subcontractor, who have to show that they are trustworthy, Ingo saves queries, speeds up processes, reduces paperwork, creates trust, and secures new orders. So Ingo makes it possible that all credentials are in one place, that automatic information is sent if something is missing, and that some subcontractors can show that their employers are ready for action at the construction site. Last but not least, the most important part, the workers or the employees themselves. For the workers, it is important to have control over the data and that they can decide with whom they share it. So to ensure data availability, employees receive automatic information about expiring documents. Further, it is necessary to ensure that the compliance documentation is portable, secure, and readily available. And like Jonathan mentioned today already, it's possible digital or haptic. So in order to illustrate how easy the correct containment can be for all three parties, my colleague Florian will explain you the process in more detail in the next few minutes.
Thank you, Fabian. Yeah, now let's have a quick look how easy it works in practice, so you get an insight in our Ingo platform. In the Ingo platform, you create your employees, your subcontractors, your projects. All the data comes from our API interface, that's also possible. And the relevant subcontractors and the employees are then authorized to the respective projects in the platform. Authorized bodies like the client or the customer create projects or upload credentials in the platform. And another thing is that we are already a few weeks before we were in Berlin at the Funke conference. That's an event for the EU DI wallet. And as soon as the EU DI wallet will be available, we will be also part of the ecosystem of the EU DI wallet. And this helps us to reduce the workload for everyone involved in the future. And the construction worker has all his credentials in our Ingo app. And he can use it offline, as Fabian already mentioned, too. So this option is also available. And also the legal requirements or customer specifications are checked on the construction site by a QR code scan or even at the site access to get into the construction site. Yeah, that's a look in our app. It seems very easy. Put in some credentials like ID, A1 certificate, and so on. Get a QR code, and then enter the construction site. Yeah, it is that easy. But of course, we still got some work to do. So as I said, access of a construction site. Our first access system has been live for a few weeks now in Berlin. At a construction site of the German government. Everyone is very happy with our solution and it works. So that's great. And for this reason, we are also working together with a turnstile company to bring this solution to many other construction sites first of all in Germany, but afterwards also to other countries. And yeah, as I mentioned, we will integrate the UDI wallet app. That's one part for next year, hopefully. And yeah, one big part is also to work with other parties, and so cooperations with various authorities, including customs, to streamline the process in the future. Yeah, that was a quick overview of our Ingo solution, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We now move to Q&A session. If there are any questions in the room or online, questions in the room have priority, and the speakers will give their answers in the same order as they presented. No. There is a question over here. Please wait for the microphone. Thank you.
For Christoph, if its software is possible to be provided also to private company, because, for example, we receive many application, okay, from third national that try to come in Italy, for example, but you know that to come in Italy you must have an employer before starting the application, I suppose also in other countries like Germany. So your software could be very helpful in providing secure information regarding the skills and the degree of education and anything that you have mentioned before. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Indeed, there's similarities, especially the use case of migration. Overall, what we found is that the reason we work with public actors dominantly is because they really have the mandate for, let's say, labor market mobility, and that's also where you connect to, let's say, these national frameworks. If you work with the private sector, they mostly, not exclusively, there's exceptions as you mentioned, but mostly they care about internal mobility within a company, right? So if I'm an employer, I care about how to get people from A to B, how to make them more efficient, but I don't care what happened to them before or after, unless they have big enough pain points in caring what happens after and before, and that's migration, I think, is one of these examples. For us, for the moment, it's really a core focus of public employment agencies, but we hear this use case over and over again. I can only echo that, yeah.
Thanks.
And would you like to? The question was just for you?
Just for Christoph.
Okay, okay. Any other questions?
Just to clarify that we do not do matching, yeah, in this respect, like, or any skill set. We are macro social, macroeconomic, macro-demographic projects. So we do macroeconomic modeling, macro demographic modeling, and then searching for policy scenarios. Although we do some meso-level things, how to connect policies and situations in origin and destination countries, especially within talent partnership, which is the policy language, how not to drain countries of origin, and also to prepare education and training infrastructure pre-departure. Yes, so that's what we include. So we do not do this at the individual level. Yeah.
Okay. I was just asking if the other members of this panel would like to have to answer to the question, but we can proceed. So I don't know if there are any questions. I do have a question, if no one else has. Do you see technology being mature enough to achieve what you want? Or is there also some things that need to evolve in the technology to allow you for improved digital solutions? So, and the question is for the entire panel. So, I don't know if...
Yeah, I think technology is never mature enough, because I think if you asked that question 5 years ago, from today's perspective, you'd probably say no. Today we think it is mature, but I really think that the key thing is not the maturity of technology, which I think is in many use cases pretty mature. It's really one of adoption and ecosystem compatibility. So in other words, if you don't have the stakeholders aligned and engaged in what they want to do with that technology, that's a bigger problem than the maturity or the lack of maturity for the technology itself. It's really, I think you need a acceptance and embracement of certain functions and processes, and then technology follows naturally.
Okay.
Quickly, just one point, that technology is a tool. It depends what we put into it, yes? So if we suffer from data shortages, which we said at the very beginning, that we miss some data or we do not collect the data relevant to current times, that technology wouldn't be of help in this sense, yes? So what is put in will be taken out. So for us, technology is a tool, but Adam can reflect as Professor of Information Technologies more. I think it's the question for the whole lecture, I would say. Yeah.
As you all know, who are working with AI technologies today, this is like a super speed train or maybe a jet plane. We really, it's hard to say what's going to come next and whether we are really reaching the goal of having a very powerful general intelligence as the big techs are promising and in a reliable way. Here I would stress that if there are limits that we are experiencing currently, that is still the same good traditional error, software error, or in this case AI model error, which we need to deal with. And basically, many of the other people who spoke today approached this, the use of AI with great caution. For example, using human AI or AI human in the loop approaches instead of just relying on AI. And I think that's the way to go, obviously, right? In our case, we are trying to use AI cautiously by trying to limit hallucinations, for example, relying on curated articles to respond and curated data to respond, but still we can end up with a lot of errors there. So the question, I think, is, no, the technology, AI technology is definitely not mature for the more complicated applications that we are still testing. We are trying to do this. This is a research project. But on the other hand, we saw in the previous panel a lot of very practical applications that try to solve simpler tasks, and AI may work very well there and very safely there. So I would say that the difference is between simple and complex tasks that you use for AI, right? Okay. We're still not ready for tackling the complex ones, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. But that's indeed interesting, because we move, we progress as far as the technology allows us, and we get to a certain point where technology also needs to evolve more so that we can progress more.
From my point of view, as Adam said, technology is a very fast train, and one of the big tasks is to get also the people on this fast train, especially on the construction side. There we have a lot of people who are not familiar with technology as maybe we are here. So that's one of the big challenges, and it's good if technology moves fast, but we also have to take the people with this train.
Thank you. So if there are no further questions, I think we can close this session. Thank you. Thank you for your presentations.
Thank you.